What I want to talk about today is the mind-body-soul or mind-body-spirit connection. I love everything that's been said here today. It just resonates with me. If there's a musical orchestra going on inside my mind-body-spirit, it is completely in harmony with what I hear here today. So when I hear about mind-body-soul connection, I think, how am I going to find peace in the midst of the stresses and the turmoils of life? How am I going to preserve or regain my health? And how do I connect to God? The psalmist in Proverbs 23:26 gave us a clue when he said, "My son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways." But first, I would like to talk to you about something near and dear to us, and that's our hearts. But if I told you that smoking and high cholesterol were bad for you, bad for your heart specifically, I'm sure you would all agree. But if I told you that job-related stress was every bit as bad for you as smoking and high cholesterol, wouldn't that give you pause? Here are some of the facts in the published scientific literature. At least 80% of all doctor visits are stress-related. 1/3 of all Americans are living with extreme stress. And 50% of all Americans say they lie awake at night regularly because of stress. I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience. I know I have. In another study, it shows that stress increases the risks of heart attack, depression, and cancer. But now I'm going to talk to you about one aspect of dealing with that stress, and that is our hearts. We use our hearts to deal with stress. I'll explain. So what is the heart? The heart's mechanical, it's neurological, it's energetic, and it's biochemical. We often think of the heart simply as a mechanical pump that doesn't do anything but circulate the blood around the body. It's sort of like a dumb terminal. It doesn't do much on its own. But the heart is the most powerful, constant generator of rhythmic pattern information in the body. Now, the importance of that I will get back to later on. It's neurological. It has its own nervous system that's been dubbed the heart brain. There's a whole scientific field surrounding this called neurocardiology. There are signals sent between the heart and the brain all the time. And 80% of those signals that are sent from the part of the nervous system called parasympathetic, 80% of those signals are sent from the heart to the brain. Now let me repeat that. 80% of the signals that are sent between the heart and the brain travel from the heart to the brain. So just think of that. The heart is directing the brain as to what it is supposed to do, not the other way around. It's a two-way street, but the heart is speaking. The heart has a nervous system that's talking to the rest of the body. The heart is energetic. It produces an electromagnetic field that we can measure. Now, the electrocardiogram is the most well-known example of that phenomenon. We've all probably had an EKG, or most of us have. But the magnetic field of the heart is very powerful. The magnetic field of the heart is so powerful that when we think about the brain, people think about that you can transmit brain waves and I can, influence you or have some sort of mental telepathy thing going on. But when you measure the brain waves, they travel only a few inches out from the brain. We're electrical organisms. We have charges, so things happen electromagnetically. But the magnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times more powerful than that of the brain. With sensitive equipment, you can measure the magnetic field of the heart away from you about 8 to 10 feet. So just think of that. There's this invisible magnetic field that extends 10 feet in front of you, each and every one of us in this room, 10 feet to the back, 10 feet up in the air, and 10 feet down into the ground. So there's this magnetic bubble that surrounds each and every one of us. And anybody knows about physics and things like this, you know that these magnetic fields interact with each other. So information is being transmitted between all of us in this room right now, whether we're aware of it or not. Now, have you ever been, just to give you an example of that, have you ever been around somebody that makes you feel really uncomfortable? Maybe, anxious, and you just want to get out of there as fast as possible, and that person hasn't said a word? On the other hand, have you ever been in somebody's presence that makes you feel calm, comfortable, peaceful, warm, loved, and you didn't want to go, and they hadn't said a word either? That's an example of picking up, some people might say, picking up someone's good vibes. Well, there's scientific evidence that backs this up very strongly. So this is part of that unseen information that's being transmitted between us all the time. Now, our hearts are also biochemical. They're a part of the endocrine system, the system of glands that transmits information to remote parts of the body. Think of the thyroid gland or the pancreas that secretes insulin. The thyroid gland secretes thyroid. Those hormones go out all over the place and do things all over your body, distant from the actual gland. So the heart is part of that endocrine system. Now, let me tell you about a hormone that's called oxytocin. Oxytocin is produced predominantly by the brain. It's best known for being secreted in high amounts when a woman goes into labor to make mom's uterus contract so she can deliver her baby. Now, during that time, she's flooded with huge doses of oxytocin. And, labor is painful, hard work, and it's not called labor for nothing. But what happens to the mother after this painful, suffering experience of going through labor? And I've witnessed this, and I don't think I could have done it, but that was really something. And now it's very common that when someone goes through a very painful experience and suffers a lot, that thing or person that caused them this great pain and suffering would be avoided. Our bodies are made that way so that if you touch a hot stove and you don't do that again. But what happens to the mother? What happens to mom after she's delivered that baby and the pain is gone? Well, she, quote, soon forgets the anguish for her joy of the new child that is born into the world, as it says in John 16:21. She's flooded not with aversion, but with intense bonding and love for that new child. The amazing miracle is this hormone, oxytocin, that I mentioned. This hormone that made her uterus contract also creates an intense feelings of bonding and love that seal the union between mother and child and overwhelm that natural tendency to avoid that which causes us such great pain. And recently discovered, oxytocin is not just produced by the brain. It was thought it was just a brain hormone. But it's also produced by the heart. The heart secretes oxytocin. It's part of the endocrine system. And it secretes just as much as the brain does. And men, we produce oxytocin also, and it helps us bond with our spouses and others. So you see, our hearts are really, among other things, they're a sensory organ. It's feeling, it's understanding, it's communicating with the brain and directing all kinds of functions in our body. So now back to the question. What can we do about stress in our lives? Do we quit? Do we retire? Do we find another job? Do we move away? But there is a more excellent way. We can train our hearts to treat the ill effects of stress. Remember, I said that the heart is the most powerful, constant generator of rhythmic pattern information in the body. What does this mean and why is it important? Well, let me explain. We have this misconception that the heart beats regular like a clock with no variation from beat to beat. In fact, there is a subtle beat-to-beat variation which is normal and also healthy. This beat-to-beat variation can be measured and followed. The more rhythmic and smooth is this pattern of beat-to-beat variation, the healthier is not just the heart, but the entire body. This pattern is called heart rate variability. A well-researched technique and device for measuring heart rate variability and has been used clinically is called heart math. With this device, which I brought with me and I have an example of here, you can measure how healthy this subtle variation in the heartbeat is. When the variation is very healthy and at its best, that's called high coherence. When it's very low and it's sort of at its not best, we call that low coherence or chaos. I like that. Because I'm sure we've all felt some chaos trying to, get here through the Chicago traffic this morning. So, although chaos sounds bad, it's where we are most of the time. We're walking around doing stuff. We're not in this high coherence state. So, when you think about what this looks like, the chaotic state is, think about these waves out here on Lake Michigan. When the waves are choppy and erratic and jumping up and down and changing rapidly, that's the chaotic rhythm. However, when the lake is smooth and the waves are very soft and gentle and rolling back and forth in a very, very organized and sort of predictable pattern, that's the pattern of coherence. Now, what's important about this is this ability to watch how the heart is beating from beat to beat reflects how healthy the entire body is. And it's a very immediate response. You can change that in a matter of seconds. So the ability to measure that is a great way to see how healthy your body and heart is. Now, this beat-to-beat variability that I was talking about is part of what's called the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic means involuntary. That's what I grew up thinking. So think about breathing and your heart beating period and things like that. Those things are sort of out of our conscious control. So we think. So when your heart is in this chaotic state that we can measure, nothing works really very well. We have problems with behavior, emotional regulation, depression, anxiety. And, our judgment isn't as good as it should be when you're in this chaotic state. Parts of the brain that are important in thinking and making judgment are turned off, or we call it inhibited, when you're in this state of mind. So you can't function at your best. Have you ever been upset or angry or anxious and in that state of mind said something that you later perhaps regretted? You may have said to yourself, what was I thinking? Yeah, in a way, you weren't in your right mind. So also, low heart rate variability is associated with heart disease, heart failure, congestive heart failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, strokes, weight gain, obesity, and metabolic syndrome, which is a pre-diabetic state, which so many people are in today. So low heart rate variability is a predictor, a very strong predictor of future health problems. So are we stuck with this? So if I checked your heart rate variability and it was low, you'd go, nothing I can do about it. I'm going to just end up with all these diseases and get depressed and make bad choices and get upset. No, not true. So even though we think of it as part of the involuntary or autonomic nervous system, is it really outside of our control? Not so. Indeed, it's very much within our control. We can learn to train our hearts to beat in that healthy, rhythmic fashion. We can change our heart rate variability for the better. This particular validated technique is called heart math. It utilizes a mathematical formula that's in this little device that I'm going to show you here in a minute that calculates this instantaneously. And it will show you on a computer graph, which I have here, in color and sound as to what state of mind you're in. So you can determine whether your heart is in a coherent, optimal state or that incoherent state of chaos. And there are exercises you can do that can help you to attain that coherent, healthy state of mind, of heart. So I'm going to give you one exercise in 3 parts. First, you focus your attention on your breathing. And you start taking slow, deep breaths. 4 or 5 seconds in, 4 or 5 seconds out, 4 or 5 seconds in. Repeat it back and forth. And then you bring your attention from your head, from your mind, down into your heart. Consciously bring your attention down into your heart. And thirdly, you activate a positive emotion. So what does that mean? So you want to really feel something good. And what emotions really work? Gratitude, appreciation, and love. Compassion, caring. These are the emotions that you want to bring to heart, so to speak, and feel them. And this 3-part exercise will help you attain that coherent state. Now, you're going to have these little, you can't have this little piece of equipment to help you see if you're really doing it or not. It's amazing when you start doing this. You start hooking yourself up and you go, oh, I feel like I'm really in a coherent state, and you look at it and you're not. Then you realize you're thinking about something else that's making you anxious or nervous. So in one study using this technique, actually they had a husband and a wife hooked up. And they were apparently in the car driving, and the wife said something to the husband that got under his skin, and he got mad. So they had this argument in the car that lasted about 20 minutes. And after that, the husband said, I felt fine, I was over it, I'm great, no problem, not mad anymore. But when they took the monitor off and looked at his heart rate variability, it turns out that his heart rate stayed way high and his heart rate variability stayed low for like a good hour after that. So he was not back to normal by any means, even though he thought he was. And by the way, there's some 1,400 biochemical reactions that are not good for you that occur when you become upset like that persist. And it is not a healthy state of mind to be in, or body. So there are many health benefits that occur when you activate this high heart rate variability. These are physiological benefits. This isn't all just a mental thing, by any means. That heart hormone oxytocin that I mentioned, it goes up. So remember, love and bonding, by the way, it has benefits on the immune system. It has all kinds of wonderful benefits. So that goes up. Another heart hormone, By the way, there's another one called atrial natriuretic peptide. Medical terms I know, but this one is associated with heart failure. So you don't want that. You don't want a lot of that inside of you. Well, that goes down. The stress hormone cortisol, you've all heard of cortisol probably, huh? Cortisol is produced by just being stressed out, being worried about something. I probably got high cortisol levels just being up here today. But so hopefully I can bring them down. The anti-stress hormone, DHEA, doubles. It goes up by 100% with this particular technique. These have all been measured and documented. Total cholesterol drops. Fasting blood sugar goes down. Blood pressure falls. Headaches are treated with this. Muscle tension, palpitations, indigestion, body aches, sleep disturbances. So you can see that being in this state of mind, this state of heart, improves many parameters of health that are associated with all these chronic diseases that we all suffer from. In a study examining atrial fibrillation, you ever hear that one? Atrial fib? A lot of people have atrial fibrillation. I mean, it's just crazy common nowadays. And I mean in young people. It's an abnormal rhythm where the heart's beating in a chaotic fashion. In fact, we call it chaos. 75% of those people who practice this coherence techniques were able to reduce the episodes of atrial fibrillation. So 3/4 of them were able to reduce the episodes of atrial fibrillation. And 20% of them were able to stop taking medicines altogether. You know, I'm a cardiologist, and in my world, you know, when you've got AFib, it just gets more frequent, more common, more often until it's sort of permanent, and that's the way it goes. So this is amazing that you can reverse that natural history of that condition. It isn't a good thing to have, by the way, in the long term. In an asthma study, 50% of patients experienced improvement in their airway resistance. That's how they measure how good your asthma is doing, how well you can blow into this little device. Severity of symptoms dropped, and their consumption of medications were decreased. So it's not only medical problems that improve, but memory and learning as well. They studied combat veterans who had post-traumatic stress syndrome. And they found that their memory improved, their stress levels came down, their ability to learn improved. In other studies, they saw a 40% increase in long-term memory, 40%, and short-term memory increased by 24%. Another study looked at pharmacists in the medical field, and they found that their medical errors were dropped by using this heart math technique. Now think about just applying that and just, think about people being, damaged or hurt by medical errors in the medical field. This happens, unfortunately, all the time. People are stressed out, they're not thinking clearly, they're smart people, they know what to do, but they still make mistakes. So you can change that by applying these techniques to your daily life. And improving heart coherence, this high heart coherence, doesn't just affect you personally and internally, like I've been pointing out here, but it affects others around us. Remember the magnetic bubbles that we have all around us here today. A mother and her baby and her infant baby were being monitored. The mother was asked to hold her baby and love her. At that moment, the baby's EKG and the mother's brain waves, EEG, became synchronized. The mother's holding the baby up and loving her. And at that instant, they're connected. Have you ever felt that? I don't know, moms, even dads. I'm sure you felt that. Sure. Well, it's actually happening. You're influencing each other. Your child and you are connected. In one study, a young boy, Josh, and his dog, Mabel, were hooked up to heart rate variability monitors. So they kept them in separate rooms. And then they brought Josh and Mabel together. And Josh's instructions were, love Mabel up. So he's loving her up and stuff like that. And here's a dog, an animal, and a human being. And right at that moment, their heart rate became synchronized, and their heart rate variability went up to the high coherent state. Bingo. They're together. This is an animal. So they're influencing each other. And then they separated the two of them, and Mabel went right back to being, the dog, that is, went right back to being in that chaotic state again, because she was looking for Josh and he was gone. So we don't necessarily have to be consciously aware of this connection either with others. For instance, sleeping spouses were monitored through the night, and they found that during their sleep that their heart rate variability became rhythmically linked. We call that synchronized. They became synchronized together. Here they're not conscious or asleep, and yet they're synchronized together. And, you've heard the poets say, two hearts beating as one. Well, there it is. In the Song of Solomon, you ever read the Song of Solomon? It's a beautiful love poem. The lover and the beloved's talking to each other. It's just gorgeous. And there's a line in there in verse 5:2 that says, I slept, but my heart was awake. See how that works? Scientists have come to understand what poets have always known. In another study, a group of 4 people were seated around a table training in heart math. This was a study that they had done. 3 of them were already trained in this. They were able to enter this high coherent state very easily. The 4th one thought that everybody was sort of practicing this coherence exercise, that everybody was sort of new at it and no one knew how to do it. When the 3 people that were trained in it, without the 4th one knowing, went into the high coherent state, the 4th person was able to get there a lot faster. They did the statistical analysis, and they found out that if the 3 people were in that state, and they could go in and out of it, they knew how to do that. That influenced that 4th person to be able to attain that state. So when you're in a room full of people, or at a table, or at a meeting, and everybody's pretty much on task and interested in what's going on and sort of a like mind, you're influencing each other to make better decisions and to be able to get into that good state that helps you make better decisions and learn better and all those other things that I mentioned. So you see how these electromagnetic fields that we have all around us at all times, that we can measure, influence the other person in the vicinity. And by the way, although I don't have that in front of me right now, this has also been used to measure intuition, or used to see if intuition can be influenced, and it turns out it can. Now that's even, adds another layer of amazement as to how powerful our hearts are. So we can see here that a grateful heart is a critical part of our total health. Appreciation, gratitude, compassion, and love are central to our optimal functioning as human beings. St. Paul in 1 Corinthians 12:31 tells us, "And yet I will show you a more excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men or angels but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that I can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing." Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered and keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. 21st century science finally catches up with first century Christianity. In John 1:18 we read, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear." So, we can see that this coherent, healthy state of heart cannot exist with fear, anger, resentment, frustration, and anxiety. But it thrives with love, compassion, caring, empathy, and mercy. So St. Paul says in Romans 2:14, "For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law to themselves, who show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another." So the law is written in their hearts. Literally, it's written in our DNA. Our hearts are the physical and spiritual center, orchestrating and coordinating the healthy function of body and soul. And the prayer of the heart, the Jesus prayer, epitomizes this. Archimandrite Zacharias says in his book, The Hidden Man of the Heart, that in the fullness of repentance, that God speaks to us and, quote, "His voice imparts divine power that opens up and quickens the heart of man. The opening of his heart signifies the healing of his personhood, for he is now spiritually reborn and has been adopted by the Father who is without beginning." So, our hearts are quickened and our personhood is healed, and we are united to God through prayer. David said in the 50th Psalm, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." A clean heart, one free of fear, anger, hostility, free of the passions. I would suggest that the heart is an entry point to us for the Spirit of God. And when we are coherent and allow the Holy Spirit to enter, then we become entrained or synced with the Holy Spirit. And just like my earlier example with our sleeping spouses, as you remember, how wonderful to be entrained with the source of life. As I said earlier, through the psalmist in Proverbs, who said, "My son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways." He's given us the great commandment to love one another from our hearts. And so, in following his ways, the commandments given to us by his church, our hearts are now open to receive divine grace. The message I want to leave you with is this. This marvelous biology with which we are divinely fashioned thrives on love, prayer, and thanksgiving. God is love and is the source of love, and to him all thanksgiving is due. The peace of God that surpasses all understanding awaits us. True healing abides there. So we can actually say that the latest advances in scientific evidence concerning the heart and around the heart tell us that we are hardwired to connect to God. Thank you. Let me do a little. How much time do I have? Oh, sure, absolutely. Okay. Well, I have. See, it probably turned off here. I have a little heart mat demonstration. If someone wants to give it a try, you want to try? Okay, come on up. Hold on, let me get this. Okay. This is the way this picks up your heartbeat. In this case, it just clips to your earlobe. So maybe take off one of your earrings. So, here you go. There we go. All right. Okay, so can you see this well enough? So we'll do that little exercise that we just talked about. So so we're going to go through this exercise, that three-part exercise. It's called quick coherence technique. So first of all, kind of relax your belly so you've got nice soft belly, and with your belly soft, begin taking slow, deep breaths in and out. 3, 4, 5 seconds in, 4 or 5 seconds out, 4 or 5 seconds in. And keep going. Now we're going to start this here. And now, bring your mind down into your heart. Keep it down in there. And now, bring to mind something that you love, something that makes you happy, someone you care for. It could be a place. Or a person, maybe a child. And just kind of hold that thought there. Hold that feeling. I don't want to distract her. That's pretty good. I think you sort of showed us you can do it. Okay, that's great. I'm going to take that off. Yeah. Didn't let it go too long. Let me explain here. This is her heart rate variability. See how smooth and not jagged. It's just up and down, kind of very smooth. But more importantly than what it looks like is over here are these bars, red, blue, and green. Red is low coherence, and blue is medium, and green is high. Now, they give you a sort of a goal here to try to stay within these lines, and you were doing great. You were right in the zone, so to speak. But you can see that 79% of the time you spent with the ear clip on was in high coherence. So what you were doing was working, so to speak. What were you thinking about? Your kids, yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah, same here. So she was thinking about her children, and you could see she loves her children, cares for them, grateful. And look what happens. So when you're in this state of mind, as we described earlier, everything works better. And the rest of it was spent mostly in blue, and then a little bit in red. And don't worry about that. I know I wired myself up while I was sitting over there, and when I got to 50-50, I felt pretty good about myself. So this is great, by the way. This is great. Businesses have used this to help retain their employees. In other words, people that are dissatisfied with their jobs. They bring HeartMath in to train them. They have a corporate division. And they train the employees in HeartMath, and they like their jobs. They stick around. They do better jobs. They're more productive. They do this with athletes. They become better athletes. They're more precise. They perform better. They have better times and all this kind of stuff. They've even used it in the military. They use it in the military. The soldiers are more. They make better choices. They don't make mistakes. So when we function at our best, our entire physiology improves, our mental function improves, our interpersonal relationships improve, all this improves. These techniques existed millennia ago in uniting ourselves to be Christ-like. This is how we turn all these pathways on, so to speak. So this is what's so beautiful to me about what I've learned about this. It's just brought me closer to my faith and made me see the truth in Christ.